Now, CBS News senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe joins us. Ed, CBS News has learned that the Biden administration may have advised Israel to delay its ground offensive. There was so much back and forth around this question with the administration. Where does it stand now? Is the U.S. in fact doing this? What more do we know?
It's been described to us, Lilia, as essentially the U.S. urging Israel to just really think through what it may ultimately decide to do and what the results or the effects of that would be. Officials have stressed that this is not the U.S. dictating terms of what it should do, but merely sort of asking questions or reminding them of past experience in the United States after terrorist attacks. And we've seen both the president and other officials say that, they're just going to have to think through things. What would it mean if you go into Gaza Strip? How do you get out? Who would run the place if it is that you're trying to replace Hamas? But you've also seen Secretary of State Antony Blinken suggest that part of the reason why they're okay with it essentially being dragged out, the beginnings of some kind of an invasion, is it might buy time for other hostages to be released or the humanitarian situation that you were discussing with Chris Livesay to get sorted out. So we'll likely hear more about this later today. The president's set to speak on it. Other White House officials will be taking questions on it. But in essence, they are still urging caution and to take time if necessary. So urging perhaps a delay, hopefully also to protect civilian life as those intentions. The U.S., as you said, telling Israel this, but at the same time ramping up its own military in the Middle East. What's the strategy there? Well, yes, this is an increased force posture across the Middle East, essentially in response to rocket attacks on U.S. forces operating in Syria and Iraq. Remember, we're still there. And there have been militias in one way or another tied to Iran that have, since the Hamas attacks, targeted U.S. troops in Syria, southern Syria, but also in and around Baghdad and other parts of Iraq, which has led the State Department to tell non-essential diplomatic staff and families who may be based in Baghdad or Erbil to the north to get out of the country as a precaution. The Defense Secretary, the Secretary of State, and others have been saying, Iran, don't do this, do not escalate it. We will respond in kind if need be, but certainly nobody wants to see that happen. You have the two carrier strike groups, as you see there, that have been rolling into the area as well. Remember, there was a battleship that intercepted some missiles fired from Yemen in the direction of Israel late last week. That, too, is a reason why the force posture is being increased. So plenty of concerns security-wise, but let's talk about the economy. The president has an economic event this afternoon. How concerned is the White House about the impact of the war in the Middle East on the U.S. economy? That's right. They're trying to demonstrate he can essentially walk and chew gum at the same time, focus on domestic matters and priorities while also monitoring what may ultimately happen in the Middle East. This is another outgrowth of one of the big pieces of legislation passed in recent years that the president is running on that he wants Democrats to focus on. As for what it could do to the economy, unclear what tensions in the Middle East would do to the overall U.S. economy necessarily. But one interesting argument that's being made for why the aid that the president's now pushing for, about $100 billion collectively in domestic and foreign concerns that he asked for on Friday, is that much of the, say, $60 billion or so that would be spent towards supporting Ukraine ultimately actually results in a replenishment of U.S. military stockpiles that are assembled in dozens of states across the country. We saw Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, a Republican, calling that out this weekend and saying, look, what the president's asking for, in essence, is an American jobs bill to replenish our military stockpiles in the defense industry, and no Americans are getting killed. I don't see an issue with that. So for now, at least, no immediate economic concerns. A rare consensus and alliance there we saw on Face the Nation yesterday with Margaret Brennan. Ed O'Keefe, thank you. Take care.